Okay, so what we're going to talk about now is the dynamic range of your mix. And basically this simply means what is the loudness, the overall loudness of your mix. And by far, this is one of the most common things that, producers that are, trying to get to that next level is what they want to know. It's like, okay, I've got my songs, I'm producing my songs, but they just don't sound like the same ones that are in the club. Or they just don't sound like the same ones that I hear on the radio or whatever the case may be. And that all boils down to what is the overall loudness and dynamic range of your mix. And that is dictated about what's going on the master bus. That's where we're going to control the overall level. And just because your mix sounds loud in the studio doesn't really mean that your overall mix is very loud or punchy. So we're going to explore this a little bit right now. So I've got this track and it's pretty much finished, and now I'm going to take a look at what's going on in the master bus to figure out how loud this mix is and really get it kind of mastered and ready to go. So I've got it, and I've got a loop here which is pretty much the loudest section of the song, and this is going to allow me to set the levels. So I've got all these tracks in my session, and they're obviously feeding the stereo out, or the master bus, so everything's going out this left and right output. Now if we play the track, alright, we can see the levels that are going on, and it's kind of overloading a little bit. And I've got on here a multimeter, and when I play this track again, alright, these are the levels, of the mix. So you can see that there's a dark blue level meter and a light blue. Darker blue is the peak loudness. That's the sharpest and fastest signals that are happening in the mix. Maybe it's a kick drum, the hi-hats, the loudest, absolute loudest section. The light blue is the average loudness. So this takes all the sounds and gives us an average level. This is called RMS level. You can see down here, peak versus RMS. Now what we want to be concerned with is the peak, so that we're not clipping, but then we also want to boost up the RMS so that the overall loudness is higher. Now humans perceive loudness on the RMS and not on the peak, because our ears can't really respond that fast. So the RMS is what we really want to be concerned with. So we're going to try to boost this light blue up a little bit. So again, what I usually do is I'll loop a section that's kind of the loudest part of the mix. That way you know that that's about as loud as your mix gets, and as you set these levels, that'll give you a nice safety range. Another thing I do, let me just close this multimeter. Another thing I do is I set up a trim fader a lot of times. And what that is that is all my faders in the entire mix going to this bus. So I've sent all the faders one way or another to this bus. So as I play this, I can adjust the whole mix up or down. And what this gives me control over is I can feed the master bus more or less. I really want to leave the master bus at 0, and with the trim and with all these plugins, get it to where it's in exactly where I want to be. So alright, let's bring the trim up a little bit, and we're going to take a look at the master chain that I use on most of my tracks. So the first thing I have is a multimeter, and this is going to give us the levels before any processing. And then at the very end you see another multimeter, and this is going to be the overall level after all the processing. So between these two meters I can look at the pre-processing level, and then at the end the post-processing level. So the first real processor that I have in the chain is the channel EQ. And I really target 3 main areas, and that is the low end. This gives a nice boost over the entire low end for your kick and your bass. I also want to look at around the muddy range of the mix, which is usually 350, 385, somewhere around in there. We have a lot of muddiness in a lot of the mixes, so I'll usually pull a little bit of that out. And then also the top end. I like to add a lot of brightness in EQ around the 5 or 6K range. So those are the 3 areas. Let's play this and take a listen. There's the brightness. That helps brighten up the overall mix. Here's this muddy range area. Now to really notice this, what I'm going to do is actually boost this up. And you can hear a lot of mud and garbage there, and I can sweep this around. And then when you find out the problem area, then you can just bring it back down, -4, -5, something like that, with a sharp cue. And that's going to really target that area. And then last but not least, low end, just like 1.5 dB, you know, around 150, something like that, just to give some solidness to the